Well, first and foremost, I was from a farm. So I'm one of seven children, and I grew up in a farm in County Cavan in Ireland. And I always had a really deep connection with animals. And as I grew up, I went off to be a chef because a hotel was, as I turned into a teenager, I was working in a local hotel. And then I went to the kitchen and ended up training to be a chef. So I got away from being in contact with animals, and I was working in different cities. I was an Olympic chef. I was on the junior Irish team
Oh, wow.
in 1996 and competed in Berlin. And I was the only girl on the team. And actually, the Australians beat us that year. So we got sixth in the world, and the Australian, which was a lady team, they won in
Oh, okay.
1996. They won the Olympics, Chef Olympics. So it was a lot of work and a lot of dedication. And when I went on and chef for years, and I went to Australia in 1999 for a year and traveled. I worked and traveled in Australia, Perth, Melbourne, and then I traveled around for 3 or 4 months. Really enjoyed it over there. And when I came back from Australia, I actually suffered with back pain, and a guy recommended that I go to this therapist. And I had a kinesiology session, and my very first touch of kinesiology. And it was with Orla Brady, who's a fabulous kinesiologist based here. And so I had a session, and 2 days later, my back was pain free, and I'd had sore back for 6 weeks. So I went and had a follow up session with her, and I couldn't get what she was doing because she was working with my arm, and I had had a sore back, and I had physio and sports massage and stuff before. So someone just working with your arm, and she did test my legs and stuff, but I thought that I was going nearly for a full massage or something instead of, I wasn't aware of what kinesiology was. And I mean, this is 20 years ago.
Yes.
So like in Ireland, there would have been very few kinesiologists. And um, and they were working a little bit different, where they would have done a lot of oil testing and food testing and stuff and selling vitamins and minerals, whereas Orla had done Touch for Health kinesiology and then studied some of Hugo's kinesiology. So I moved to Belfast after the back pain, and I developed a frozen shoulder 3 years later. And 3 months I went through all the conventional medicine and ended up going back to find Orla, the kinesiologist. And I went back and had another session with Orla on a Saturday morning. And the next day, my shoulder pain was gone. And I'd had it for 3 months. So this was a real light bulb. And I wanted to know, how did this work? Why did it work? What's the difference between this and physio and sports massage and acupuncture and everything else that I'd tried? Why did this work? So I went back to Orla 10 days later and had a follow-up treatment and said, I'm really interested in this and why it worked and what's going on. And I'd had a lot of stress in my life at that time, working in a busy kitchen, and it was just stressful. And I could see my work in a complete different light. And I gave in my notice in my job after my second balance. And it was completely out of the blue. I had worked in that job for 2.5 years and no one saw it coming. So I gave in my notice and I moved back to live near Orla so I could go and train with her.
Okay.
So I did Reiki healing with Orla first and foremost, and learned about energy and how energy worked and how we behave in certain patterns and how important energy is, and about touch with people, about the laying on of hands and the connection that we have with people when we're in a room and how we behave with others and how important this was. And this was a brilliant foundation for me as a chef going to work in a clinic face to face with people, because I was going to need this for the next 20 years. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't really know where I was going because I was still working a job and training.
Yes.
So Orla had traveled all over. Orla was an amazing teacher, and she had done Reiki initially, and would be very guided. And she had traveled. She had done Touch for Health, and then she traveled throughout Europe, looking at SIPs and all the different kinesiologies. And she found Hugo somewhere. She found Hugo, and she did training with Hugo. And when she lifted his book, she went, "This is it." So she found an amazing modality of kinesiology, and she brought Hugo to Ireland, and Hugo taught us in Ireland in 2007, 2008. So Hugo was over and back to Ireland, and I had the most amazing journey in class, practicing on each other. And I think that this is really, really important, that, for me, my step into kinesiology was face to face, and that I got as much from giving a balance as I did from receiving the balance. And for me, it was really, really important to have the balance, so that I knew what it felt like in my body. And I also knew what it felt like to give a balance, and the feedback from the person. And when you did the training, even in a 2-day workshop, so we used to do a practice on a Friday evening, and then a full day Saturday and a full day Sunday. So like I was getting 7 or 8 balances, and nearly by the end of it, I was out of gold as to what I wanted. I was having to, oh, what'll I make up now? But like where we worked on setting balances. So like when I started working, I did I Ching in 2008, in January 2008. And when I did I Ching, just before I did I Ching, I lost a horse. It had weed poisoning, and I lost a horse, and I was really upset that my kinesiology couldn't sort this horse out. And when I did I Ching, I really felt the energy change. It was like my eyes opened further. It was like I could see a horse can see a very large vision, and it just misses the blind spot behind. And when I sat up from a balance, this is exactly how I felt. I felt like the horse that I had lost, its spirit had stepped into me, and I could now see much more clearly. And the following day, I read an article in a local paper, and it was about a racehorse trainer that was in trouble. And I rang Director Inquiries, and I got the trainer's number, and I rang him and said, "Hi, my name is Joan, and I do kinesiology, and I think I can help you." And I ended up going to work with him that day, and they had 150 horses in training, and they had tested and blooded and swabbed and scoped and done everything and couldn't find out what was wrong. So I worked with the last 4 horses that raced, and each one, I just went into the stable. I didn't know the horse's name or anything about them. And I just went in and tested and balanced each horse as I went. And I explained to him what I found. So the first horse had showed a wind issue. And I explained to him, it's just showing a wind issue. There's something wrong with the horse's wind. So he obviously can't breathe properly. And the man had a slight smile across his face, and then just went, "Right, okay." And then we moved stable, and the next horse, I explained that the horse didn't like the ground that he ran on. And he was like, "Okay." So I said, "He's just fatigued, but he's okay. There's nothing else wrong." And the next horse, they had switched jockeys. So I said, "Look, this horse didn't like whoever rode him. Have you changed his normal rider to the..." And so anyway, he came out and he said, "I want to know how you know all this stuff." And I said, "Well, I'm testing." And he was like, "I was using his arm when I tested." And he goes, "But how?" And I said, "Because this is what kinesiology is about. It's about testing and showing the imbalances." So I showed him with his arm. I said, if you hold your arm," and I went through points and showed him, "This is how it works." And he went, "Okay." And he goes, "Well, how?" He said, "Like, you can't see, and that first horse has a wind issue." And they do a thing called Hobday, where the epiglottis closes in on the racehorse, and they'd done a Hobday stitching, and the stitching had actually torn. So he said, "I know that it's the wind with that horse, but you couldn't know that.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, but this is where this is amazing. I said, I know. And I was only training in it at this stage. And so I started working with race horses, and like I had been training with people, and because I had done Reiki initially, I was a Reiki master, and I was practicing in clinic using my Reiki and adding my kinesiology the to the Reiki healing. And so I went on and practiced. I started working with loads of horses then. So I was on the road, and I had only started training in kinesiology, and I gave up my job chef. And after the second weekend of training in the kinesiology, I was like, right, that's it. This is what I'm doing. So I gave up. Like I was a head chef in a restaurant. So I had a really well-paid job, and I didn't have any savings because I was traveling and spending my money on courses. And so, I was really trusting and believing, because I really felt in my heart that this is it. This is what I really want to do. And I feel that that's really important to anyone that wants to do kinesiology. You don't want to be in it, and no one wants to ever be in a job because of the money. It should be that you love what you do. And for me, when I was training, even for the rest of the class, I had them drove mad, because I was relating everything to an animal. Even though we were learning for people, I was like getting all these light bulbs going off, going, this would be for a tendon. And would that work for this, Hugo? Or Orla, could I use that for this? And Orla just say, Joan, if that comes to you and you feel that that's the right thing, you need to go with it. Yeah. So Orla would have been very much about my intuitive self and about you go with it. That's really important, for us as instructors as well, to support someone who's in a learning phase. And so I started then when I was working with so many horses, and I was in and out of yards, and the first yard that I'd worked in, then I had vet referrals. So I wanted then I went and I studied equine anatomy and physiology and nutrition. And I went then, because when you do testing on horses, and sometimes you're using another person's arm, like you're not physically testing the horse's muscles. So we can still affect the muscles, but I would use the alarm points and association points. And so it looks very, very gentle, and you just look like you're going around poking the horse, So I went and I did equine massage, thinking, well, I'll do equine massage, so it'll seem that I'm doing something as well, where I thought I need to add something physical in, right? Because I need people to, in my mind as a chef, and this was my belief system, I needed to do something physical to earn a living. My belief system was I had to work physically hard to earn a living. So when I did my equine massage, but I have never used equine massage. I've always only used the energy healing and kinesiology. So I have done a lot of Hugo's training. Then I followed Hugo around Europe, and have done a lot of Hugo's courses over the last number of years, and have an institute. I run the Irish Institute, NK Institute, and I'm an NKC board member. So I've traveled around doing the courses, but with lockdown, we can't have any face-to-face. So it's kind of held us up, but we do hope to be back again soon practicing. But it's been an absolutely amazing journey doing kinesiology with animals, and for it to come, and when I went to do kinesiology initially, I had never in my wildest dreams thought that I'm going to be an animal kinesiologist, or where it was going to take me. I was just playing with it to see, okay, well, I'm here now, and let's go. I like the 50-50. Some weeks I like to be out in the road, so I have people that have whatever comes. So I go with the flow. Like this week I was away yesterday working on cattle. calves that were injured after they were born. And today I have people in clinic, and Wednesday I have people in clinic, and then Thursday I'm away doing horses. So every week is different. It's never the same. So I really enjoy it. I like being out and about, and I enjoy working with people. Like, what I find is sometimes, people go through a lot. I get a lot of people with a lot, especially with this COVID and coronavirus and people being locked in. There's a lot of people are really, really stressed at this moment in time. So you need to be on the ball, and being in clinic for 15 years has definitely given me everything that I need to work with these people right now.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that. Yeah, it's always hard to pick one. I think from working, initially for me, my goal in that I Ching was to work with top Irish racehorses. And so that was my goal. And the next day it happened for me. That's how quick it happened, and for me to go to a yard with these top Irish racehorses, I felt like I'd made it. I was totally blown away. Yeah, but they had tried everything else, and they'd gone down the medical route, and no one could shed a light as to what was happening, and I know that I just had this knowing. I felt it in my heart and in my gut. And when you're working with horses, that's where you need to be grounded, your heart and your gut. You can't be thinking about where you need to be in 10 minutes, or you have to be very, very present.
Yeah.
And I have done equine assisted. I went over to England and I did equine assisted learning, and it looks at about being heart centered and about being present, like where if you were in this if you were in it for the money, you wouldn't be able to stand in that power and stay in that present thing. And like horses don't put up with a half measure. You either are congruent and you're there, or you're gone. Like a horse will put his foot on you if he thinks that you're not concentrating. A wild animal's instinct is she going to be here present, or am I going to be able to get out of this situation from doing what it is that she wants me to do? So
they're intuitive, aren't they?
Oh, really, really intuitive. Yeah, they know you thinking.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where, for me, going out to work on the animal is really important, because some people can't understand why I would get in a car and drive for 2 hours to be with the animal, because to me, that's what kinesiology was always about. It was about the physical touch and about the testing and then the laying on of hands. And I suppose maybe that comes from the energy aspect of it. That's who I am, and that's what's really important to me. And everyone, you have to go with what's in your heart, and that's in my heart. And the animals, like one of the so last November there was an animal, that a bullock that couldn't walk, and it's actually in the conference presentation. So on the Friday before he was going to a show and sale, so it was at the very end of the year, and the bullock couldn't walk on the Friday evening, and he was to be sold on the Tuesday. And the owners were really, really upset over this animal. And the lady, I had worked on horses for the lady, so she rang me and asked me would I do a bull. So I went and did this bull at 10 o'clock at night. I finished my human clinic and jumped in my car and drove to them. And I did the treatment on the bull, where I tested and corrected and went down through different points to see what was going on. So they had sent me videos. So I would often assess an animal from a video and then decide whether it's something we could work with. So they sent me a video, and they had his fetlock joint was knuckling, and it shows, I have the video for the conference, and it showed his fetlock joint knuckling, and we did one session, and he lay most of Saturday, and on Sunday morning he got up and he walked, and he was 100%. And this bull couldn't be injected, so he'd no medical intervention. So sometimes horses will be on medication, pain relief or joint supplements or something. So yeah, you're doing a balance, but sometimes because they're throwing everything at it, you don't really know whether it's definitely kinesiology has sorted this.
Yeah.
So, like, because if an animal's sick, there has to be a team, especially if it's an expensive horse or cow. Like you have your veterinary, first and foremost, it's veterinary, and then we're, maintenance or well-being. But in this case, it was, they couldn't give it any medication because it was for this sale and it was for slaughter. So they're gonna, so they were going to have to, they couldn't use any medication because it was going into the food chain. Yeah. So we balanced. I just did one session, and the bullock walked. And I was concerned about him because he had to go for a 3-hour trailer journey. So he had to go, and a trailer is quite hard in an animal because you're driving along and they're moving and they're having to support their own weight, and they don't lie in a trailer. And he had to stand for 10 hours at a show all day. So like this and other cattle round and stuff, it means that they're more anxious, and if you have a weak point, like, more than likely they will fall down. But this bull actually went on and he won his class, and he won the section, and he got reserve champion at the show. So that was really amazing. And the horses, how the horses respond. So like initially when I did those race horses within 3 weeks, so it was like a 21-day cleanse. And within 3 weeks, and I was actually on the yard that when this happened, they had 3 winners in a row at the same meeting, which is very, very unusual. So the one trainer had a first in each race. So every horse he sent out won. And they were just ecstatic because the horses had been off for 2 months, and basically they were just going back on track. So within 3 weeks of being back, and like that initially showed me what kinesiology could do, and also I suppose about working, I knew it in my heart, and it's about working with that and just going with the flow. I think the energy aspect of it is very right, and it has to be your calling. It's not about you. The people that work with animals are, you can feel it in your body. Like I can feel a lot in my body, and I put that down to the energy work. I intuitively have always, when even doing kinesiology, I have intuitively felt the need to do certain things and not really know why I was doing them. And then when I go to a course, then I learn something and I go, oh, that's what I've been using. And I went to see an elderly vet, and he was doing the same system, and I was saying to him, that's kinesiology, and he went, oh, we don't talk about kinesiology. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, that's just what I do. And I had went to the course. The reason I went to the course was to learn. He was a physio, and he was chiropractor. He was chiropractic, physio, massage, and he was a vet. And I went specifically to see this man because I felt that maybe I needed chiropractic or physio work with my work as a kinesiologist. And when I saw him, I was like, oh my word. And it was like, okay, everything that he only used a few points and balanced the horse. He showed the structural imbalances, and then he didn't do any physio or chiropractic work or anything. It was very, very gentle. So that's what's really important, is that you find the right teacher. The right teacher is really important. Like my instructor initially was Orla Brady, and I mean, she mentored us, she guided us, um, I continue to have balances. It's really important to have balances. You can't say to be a kinesiologist and not have kinesiology sessions yourself. And the training is really important, the practice. And I get that some people, some people say, oh, I don't need much practice. But I feel that every time you have a balance, and when we touch these points, to me, when I did that and I went through the training and touched all the points on my physical body, it's in my etheric web and I can feel it. And when I go to the horses and the animals, they feel it. So for me, it's very important that the animal training is face to face. And when I trained with Orla, with the Reiki at the very initial start, that really raised my vibration. So for any healing, for that healing and groundedness, was very important, especially when going working with the animals. And that's in training that I will do, that's what I will do, for people going forward, that they will need to be grounded and solid and in a great place before they go anywhere near a horse or a cow, or because they're still a wild animal. And even though people have them, and I've seen where I've been really close to an animal, and this man, I was working with a stallion, and he would have bit, like he would just turn around all of a sudden and bite. And when I would hold him, I would have one hand on him and be working through points, and I would feel in my body before he would turn his head, I would feel him coming. It's like I felt him coming, and I would just go, ah, as soon as he would only just start turning his head, and I go, ah, and then, so he was waiting on his chance every time.
Yeah.
But you can't, you can't, you have to have that knowing in your body. You can't train, you can help that person to develop that intuitiveness, but you can't train, and you can't train that online. It has to be, I have to have them in the room and seeing and feeling where they're at and looking at all their body and how the animals respond around them. That would be training. When a person's training, there's much more than, when we're online, we're only on this aspect. You need to see all the body.
Yeah.
And you need to read, it feels different. It feels different with the animals. If I'm working here with an animal, and so I've trained a couple of people here who have done kinesiology, and then they went on and trained here in animals. And the students have come back and said that they learn much more when they watch me do a balance, because I subconsciously do a lot of things, and I maybe, even though I'm teaching you the format in a class of this is how to do kinesiology on an animal, when they watch me do it and then say, oh, you did this, why did you do that? And then it's like, oh, right, okay, that's this. Yeah. So I intuitively go to things, and sometimes that's not in the book. Yeah, honoring what's been presented and how they're feeling and sitting with it at that moment in time. And I think I've come from chef in a really well-paid job to doing kinesiology and trusting that this is my soul's purpose and this is what what I should be doing. And I'm very honored to have met such fabulous teachers in Orla and Hugo. Most of my kinesiology training has been with Hugo Tobar, and I was so honored and blessed for Orla to have found him initially, and for him to come here, to have face to face, to have face to face training with him was just absolutely amazing. And I have done some of the other courses like SIPs and a couple of other. I've done Child Center Method, which looks at primitive reflexes, and that's really good with animals too, because it looks at the primitive brain. And more, what I'm finding here is vets are really interested in this line of work that we're doing, for the results and how it works and why it works. So like we're very, we're, for the techniques that were found all the years ago, neurovasculars and neurolymphatics, we're very blessed to have people who researched so much back then and have given us these techniques, where if you look back over the years, how people have found certain things, like some people have spent years researching techniques. And that's what we need to do as well with kinesiology is, up and coming people need to, where we're looking at research and saying, right, well, new techniques and what would be good. And like, there's some amazing things out there. And people do some things naturally and aren't even aware. Like, even when you look back at Hugo's training, where he was in class and he worked with Charles Krebs and they had seen, certain techniques that Hugo was using, and I find that really exciting. I feel that that's where I am with my kinesiology with the animals. Where one of the other cases was a dog that couldn't walk. He had a brain injury, and the vets, the guy that owned him, he was a family pet, and he was a gun dog, and two dogs collided, and he had a brain injury. And the vets basically said to put him to sleep. And the guy brought him home, and this other man told him, I know this girl, her name's Joan, go and see her. So he brought the dog for treatment, and he carried him in, and he lay on the floor, and I got down on the floor beside him. So the dog would try to sit up, but he was paralyzed. So one side of his body was limp. And so I started and did the testing with him and started to do balancing. And so I test and correct as I'm going along. And I did a lot of brain formatting from the NK, and also then just did energy points down along his back. And I said to the guy, right, that's all he needs for now. So I said, he doesn't need to come back for a follow-up session for a month. And I said, my advice to you is don't allow him up onto anything, like don't allow him up onto the sofa or onto anything high. I said, when he starts to walk again, he'll lose his coordination, won't be right. And the guy kind of looked at me, and he'd never had kinesiology even himself before. So he'd never seen anyone do kinesiology. And like, when I'm doing kinesiology, I'm testing, I'm self-testing. I know people sometimes struggle with self-testing, but because I have so many clinical hours working with people, I really trust it. It's like, to me, it's nearly like using someone else's muscle, if you know what I mean. I just really trust it. So I started testing the dog, on the ground, testing using my fingers and going through the points. And explaining to him, right, it's showing these lobes in the brain, and we've de-stressed that, and we've done spinal cord. And so he left, and he rang me the next afternoon, and he went, the dog is up. And he said, the way that you told me not to let the dog up and anything, well, he said, this morning when I went out, he was on top of the kennel, and he jumped down off the kennel. And he said he always sleeps on top of the kennel, but I had felt that maybe, he said, I didn't even think he'd walk again. He said, I didn't, because he was paralyzed. We had been told to put him to sleep, and he's still alive. He's doing great now. He's 7 or 8 now. And like, that's amazing, and he had no, the vets couldn't do anything for him. And that was just kinesiology, where we were able to balance and just go with it. But it's just where, I know when I just went, yeah, he's going to be okay. Tomorrow, don't allow him up on anything. Because the guy said to me, he said, I thought you were crazy when you told me don't let him jump up on anything. He said, all I thought was, this dog can't even walk. Like, you're telling me don't let him walk, don't let him jump up anything. This dog can't even walk. So like, they are the thing, the likes of this for me with animals. Like, animals don't lie. It's really truthful. And this is where, working with the kinesiology and the energy work, it's just been mind-blowing with animals. It's amazing.
Fantastic. It's great to hear.
So I'm very blessed to have met all the people that I trained with, and that's I'm ever grateful for finding kinesiology. And I've had an amazing life traveling with working with, some of these are horses in the background that I've worked with. And So I travel working with the horses, and even like top Irish horses. So some of the horses that are going to the Olympics as well. We have a kinesiologist that will be working with them. So, I mean, it's amazing because they can't give drugs to those horses.
Yes.
You know, the medication is monitored with the FEI, and that's where kinesiology is absolutely amazing for performance and optimization of the body. You know, and we can balance both the horse and the rider. You know, so we can work the complete team, which is really important when everyone needs to be on the one hymn sheet, you know, when you're competing at a really high level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where kinesiology is amazing. Like I've seen where even an animal wouldn't eat and they couldn't give it any drugs because it was going to competition, and like with that level, the medication is really restricted. So kinesiology is amazing in that field, you know, where we can use it, we can test and de-stress the body, you know, and it's taken a long time for us to get to that level. And I feel it's really important that we're very stringent and scientific when we go to work at that level, you know, with other vets, and we're seen as credible because I don't, and that would be one of the things with my, you know, I don't do online, you know, I don't do online practice sessions. I do hair analysis where I balance using hair, and I make them a remedy. And because I feel that they need to have something physical from me, and that was in the middle of lockdown. But now if someone rings about a horse, I'm gone. I just have to be with the physical body. It's really, really important for me to do that. And that's what works for me. To be seen as well, to be there, like and it's really exciting to be there, you know, among everyone, and you're working with that. You know, if a horse goes to a racetrack, it's important even to be with the horse at the racetrack, you know, and to balance them at the racetrack. You know, you can balance them for future stress, but who knows what's going to happen on that day between, you know, here and there. Like if you're at the track and you have all that energy that's there around you, then you can work with that. And it's the same as having the person in the room on the bed. You work with what's there in the here and now, how I am, how they are. And that's what's really important. Oh, thank you.